Hello, this is Tim for Vince's RC Garage. Today I'm going to focus on how one can get into the RC hobby, specifically what tools does one need to get started and what tools are useful as you gain more experience and proficiency. If you've never had exposure to the RC hobby before, it can feel a little daunting pulling the trigger on that first RC purchase. There might seem like a lot of unknowns that are getting in your way. I hope that after watching this video that things are not as overwhelming as you might have initially thought. I got into the RC hobby when I was in middle school. I had no tools of my own and primarily used whatever my dad had lying around the shop. As I picked up the hobby again in my adult years, not much changed in terms of the tools I use to do my restorations. Over the years, I've come to find out that there are a basic set of minimum tools that you will need to start your first build, but this list is very minimal. As you gain some experience, there are a larger set of tools that make your life easier or more efficient. But not having these tools should not prevent you from jumping in and getting your feet wet building your first kit. Just for clarity here, I am not going to go through all the tools you'll need or might need to dive into painting your RC. Painting is a whole other discipline that you will need to master, and it's its own set of tool requirements, but I will leave that tool set discussion for another video. Okay, so let's get started going over the most basic tool set you will need. The most important and most used of all tools will be the screwdriver. Almost all Tamiya screws are Phillips style heads, in quotes. More specifically, Tamiya uses a GIS standard and not a standard Phillips head, but I will talk more about that later on. You can use a Phillips screwdriver to get things done. I did it for years, so if it's all you have for now, then run with it. The next two most important tools you'll need to build a Tamiya is an Allen key and a hex wrench. Luckily, every Tamiya kit comes with a box wrench, which you will work on all the nuts provided in the kit. Also, if the kit involves an Allen screw, then the kit usually includes the sizes you need. Another useful tool to have is a standard and needle nose pliers. These come in handy for things like snapping on steering rods and belt connectors. You don't need both, but there are certain use cases that one is a little more convenient than the other. A large and small flat head screwdriver. You don't need these very often, but you do occasionally, so it's always nice to have them on hand. The last tool I will list in the must-have tool set is a set of cutters. These are going to be needed when it's time to take the plastic parts off the parts tree. Any kind of wire cutters will do. That's all I'm going to list in my must-have tool set. Seriously, just like any other project, having the perfect tool for the right use case is always easier and more efficient. But with just a small set of standard tools I listed, you can successfully build your first RC. Okay, so before you hate on me, I said that you can get started with just these tools. As I mentioned, I did it for years. So now let's take a look at the set of tools I would consider a reasonable set of tools that most builders would consider something you should have in your toolbox to help preserve your sanity at all times. There are very few other tools I need outside the following list to build many RC kit. Let's start with the improvements over the items I've already mentioned. The screwdrivers. If you're building Tamiya, get a good pair of small and large GIS screwdrivers. These are Japanese industrial standards. Google it if you want to know the technical difference. Bottom line is you should get them. Now that I have them, you can feel the difference when screwing in anything. I always thought that the Tamiya screws were weak since they felt like they would strip out at any time. In fact, this was just because the GIS versus Phillips tip difference. Now that I use them, the number of times the screw actually gets stuck in the screw head is amazing. This is actually a good thing. The fit is much nicer. The Tamiya set is great, but it is a bit expensive. If you're going to go third party, make sure it has magnetic tips. I can't stress enough how useful magnetic tips are when you build RCs. A lot of times you can't tilt the parts you are working on to be in a position where the screw doesn't fall off, so you will thank me later. I would invest in a good set of Allen keys and hex wrenches. They are just easier to use. For the Allen keys, make sure you get metric sizes. You can just get a cheap foldable set, or you can spend a little more money and get a set with each that has its own driver handle. Likewise, having a set of individual hex wrenches makes getting into tight areas much easier. My pliers are my frou-frou-iest nice-to-have items. Honestly, I bought them just for the hell of it, but I have come to use them in very limited but specific situations. The soft needle nose pliers are very useful when you need to hold something that might get gouged easily. One that comes to mind is when you need to hold a ball joint connector when you screw the rod in place. If you don't have this, you can just use a rag to protect it as well. Don't use them for any heavy duty applications since it didn't take me long to snap off the tip of one of the plastic inserts. Likewise, the soft channel locks I use when I need to grip something around and don't want to scratch the piece. I use these a lot to snap shocks onto ball connectors since they usually need a wider opening than the needle nose can do efficiently. You can also just use a rag here also. Next up are the cutters. The thing about cutters is about the amount of work you needed to take and make the cut look neat. Most wire cutters are not designed to give you a completely flush cut on the plastic. It's not the end of the world, but this requires you to trim whatever part might remain, which just adds work. I've been very successful using Tamiya's side cutters. They are designed with minimal clearance between the blade, which means that once you clip a part from the parts tree, I rarely need to make any other modifications to make it neat and tidy. This will definitely save you time during a build. Okay, that is the list of the upgraded must-have tools. I have a few more nice-to-haves that I have not yet mentioned, but can be very useful at times. The first one is an e-ring tool. I will be 100% honest. I still have not come close to mastering this tool. However, trying to insert an e-ring with a pair of pliers has bent or flung more than one e-ring into oblivion. The goal is to insert the e-ring into the tool, which seats it securely, and then press it into place with minimal effort. I can't say it always works out, but it can be easier than pliers. I usually still resort to a pair of needle nose pliers to remove the e-rings. Having a good set of X-Acto knives around does come in handy sometimes. I use them a lot if the tree parts trim is not perfect and I need to shave just a little bit more off the part. Also, it's always nice just having something sharp lying around whenever you need it. This last item is not really a tool, and honestly I just recently acquired one, so I have done without it for many years, but it does have its moments. Get a nice RC work stand. Traditionally these are for doing maintenance while at the track, but I do also use them now during builds. They are less useful earlier on in the build, but as your chassis starts coming together, it's nice to have the build elevated and have it spin freely 360 degrees. Okay, that's it. I'm sure there are a million other tools that people use that make life easier on a build. These are the ones that have gotten me over my pains when building. Just for reference, here is a cheat sheet of my must-haves and nice-to-have tool lists. There are lots of other things that contribute to working in the RC hobby. Today I have only focused on building. My goal was to try to convince you that you just need to get started. As with everything in life, you learn and grow along the way. If you have pulled the trigger on your first purchase and have started building your kit, congratulations. From here, I would recommend starting to branch out on these other topics as well. Things of interest would be radio, receivers, servos, and speed controllers, batteries and chargers, and painting. Thanks for watching my must-have and nice-to-have tool lists. Subscribe to my channel and catch all my new and exciting content. See you next time.